Hi, and welcome to another Watch Geek video. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Seiko 4006-7010, which is a Bell-Matic, an epic watch that deserves way more attention than it gets. I got this watch on loan together with the 6138 and 6139 models I reviewed last week, and despite it being the least popular among them, to me it really stood out in that collection. And when a watch stands out next to the likes of Panda and Kakume, you know it has to be something else. First, the size and proportions. With a diameter of 38.5 mm and a lug-to-lug of just over 43, this watch will look excellent on even very small wrists. And for me, it is what I consider a perfect size. It is slightly thick at 13.2, but it doesn't look like that, as almost 3 out of those 13 are the boxed crystal, with the actual case being just over 10. Then there's the case shape. There is so much of Seiko DNA in these flat surfaces and these sharp edges that the watch looks like it's a vintage King or Grand Seiko. If you follow my channel, you know I find these vintage models that followed the grammar of design the best looking Seikos ever. And this one looks like it has followed the same design language to the letter. It even somehow reminds me of the Marine Master case at certain angles. It is a very unique shape and yet so very Seiko. The bracelet on this is yet another wow thing on this watch. Despite having hollow end links and stamped clasp, it is high quality with solid faceted links and drapes beautifully on the wrist, giving an incredibly comfortable fit. This has to be the best bracelet of any vintage Seiko I have handled. I would put it up right next to this, or maybe even slightly above it due to how interesting it looks. It really is that good. The dial is the same story. Beautiful silver sunburst dial with highly polished and faceted markers and hands that are almost identical to the ones on my King Seiko 45. It even has the same black lines running across the middle of the markers and hands to make them more legible. So beautiful and functional. The outer chapter ring is used for setting up the alarm function, and it has to be one of the best integrated alarm functions I have seen on a mechanical watch. Usually, they're done by using an extra hand or an extra disc, but with this, the only thing showing you it might be more than just an ordinary time and date watch is this little triangle. So how does the alarm work? It is very intuitive and very efficient, which it should be, as these types of watches were targeted at busy professionals that don't have time to lose on fiddling with things. Now, to set the alarm, you pull out the crown to the first position and turn it counterclockwise until you get it to the desired time you want it to ring at. Each line on this chapter ring represents 10 minutes. So if you want to set it up for, let's say, 7:10, you would move it here. Once you have set up the desired time, you have to wind the alarm, as this watch has 2 barrels. One is for the timekeeping, and it's wound using the rotor, as it is an automatic watch, while the other one is used for the alarm, and you have to wind it when you want to use the alarm. You wind the alarm by using the crown in the closed position. Once you have wound it and set up the time you want it to ring at, you then have to turn it on. And you do so by pulling out this button at 2 o'clock. Then once the hour hand reaches the alarm mark, the alarm goes off, and you can either let it wind down for 10 seconds or stop it by pressing this button again. Now, to use the alarm the next day, you simply wind it and pull out this button again. So let's hear it in action. Pretty brilliant if you ask me, but it's not the only brilliant thing about this movement. You see, this button is also used to set the calendar. But unlike some Orient watches where the button is stupidly used to set the day of the week, on this, it's used to change the date. Why is this brilliant? Well, because day of the week is something that doesn't change. Once you set it up and wear the watch, the cycle keeps repeating and you never have to fiddle with it. Date, on the other hand, you have to correct every other month. So whenever a month has less than 31 days, you have to move the date by 1 up the next morning. With regular watches and those that use the button to change the day of the week, you have to use the crown to move the date. But with this, you simply press the button and you're good to go. Confirming once more that it was designed to be as efficient as possible for busy professionals, just like I mentioned at the beginning. The movement itself is an automatic in-house made caliber 4006 that first came with 27 jewels. But because in the 1960s the US introduced tariffs on watches based on the number of jewels a watch has, to keep the prices down, Seiko reduced the number of jewels first to 21 and later to 17. So if you see a Bellmatic with less than 27 jewels, don't think it's a fake. It's just a later version or an expert model. Now the movement beats at 19,800 bph, comes with day, date, and alarm complication, like we explained, and the power reserve is 42 hours with the alarm having the capacity of ringing for 10 seconds. All in all, a real gem when it comes to movements. Mechanical alarm watches have become pretty much obsolete and unnecessary in today's world, but I personally find them charming and much more useful than a mechanical chronograph, so I would love to add one to my collection. When it comes to what choices one has, it's either this, a Vulcain Crickte, JLC Memovox, or as an affordable alternative, a Polyot alarm watch. Despite Vulcain and JLC being more famous and more prestigious, I would go for one of these, as I believe they can easily stand side by side with the greatest, and the fact that it's simply gorgeous does make the choice easier. Anyways, this completes this week's review, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe by pressing this button right here, and until the next video, bye.